we have enabled billing for. That will bring up the view where we can enable cloud compute. So here, where it says spin up a compute engine, so we select Create Instance. You will probably get this message: Google Compute Engine is not ready for use yet in the project. It may take several minutes if Google Compute Engine has just been enabled. So it's going to take a while for the developer console to contact Google Cloud Compute Service and create a view in Google Cloud Compute Service for your instance. So what you do is just wait and keep refreshing the browser. And this could take 10 minutes, 15 minutes even. So you might want to go away and make some coffee, come back, keep refreshing the browser. And eventually you will see the screen below. And you select Spin Up VMs Fast. So you create an instance on the left here. And eventually you should see this screen below. And this is where we configure the virtual machine. Very similar to the Amazon EC2. So we create a new instance with a name. And we have metadata, which at this moment we can just leave blank. And for firewall, we can simply select Allow HTTP traffic. For HTTPS, then you would need to configure some sort of security certificate, and that's very difficult, so we'll leave that. You choose a location for your resource, so that's where your customers will be. So if you're in the EU like me, you would choose EU. If you are in North America, you could choose the appropriate region. Then, for the machine type, we're going to choose the G1 Small. These were the options that I chose. Here we have the options as I've chosen them. The G1 Small looks like this. And a new disk from image and delete boot disk when instance is deleted, that'll save you money because they charge you for the disk. An image type, I've chosen Debian. And the disk type, it doesn't cost you any more for an SSD disk, so that will boost performance, so you can choose that. You just choose the default settings for network and external IP. And once you've configured everything here, you click Create. After you click the Create button, you may see some confusing screens. You just need to wait for a few minutes, and eventually you should be able to find this screen below. And we'll look at this screen in my running instance. Now, you won't see any CPU activity at first. The important attributes that you need to identify are down here. I've just highlighted them in blue, and it's the external IP that's important to find. And what we're going to do now is configure SSH keys. Configure the box with that key so that we can SSH into the box with PuTTY. Firstly, we are going to use PuTTYgen to generate an SSH key. Then we're going to install that SSH key for the VM instance, and then we're going to use PuTTY to SSH in. So let's carefully go through every step in that process now. We carefully went through every step for creating a key with PuTTYgen in the Amazon EC2 segment. And we'll just go through it a bit quicker now. So the key points are that we need SSH2 RSA key. We're going to actually generate a key. So generating a key now, and it will ask you to move the mouse around a blank area so that the key can be generated. When the key is generated, it's going to pop up. So this is the actual, sometimes it's what I'm highlighting in blue here, is referred to as the key block. This part here that I'm highlighting is the protocol, and this part here is going to end up being our username for the box. The important thing is that we need to have a paraphrase. So you need to enter a paraphrase here. Just a little expression that you can remember. You can think of this paraphrase for the way we're going to use the key as being like a password. So once you enter the paraphrase, don't forget the paraphrase. Write it down if necessary. So here, in the documentation, we've highlighted the steps so that you can review. So this is the download link if you can't remember how to find PuttyGen or if you've lost your new box. This is what the final result looks like. And here, I've entered the paraphrase. You need to save the private key. So you select Save the Private Key. So we do not save the public key, we save the private key. We remember the name that we save the key in. So now, what we're going to do is configure the instance with that key. So we need to actually select the instance, and we go down and we see here the metadata. You select the metadata, and you can see up here there's a tab for SSH keys. So there, I have actually configured the key. So the way I do that is, I actually grab just what's in here. So this differs a little bit from Google's instructions because if you look at Google's instructions, they are saying here, put a username and email. And it may work if you do that. But what you can do in the first instance, just to get used to the process, you just use what PuttyGen creates. So you copy this, you go edit. This is my first key. I can add a new key this way. So if I just copy what I copied out of PuttyGen, and see how this last bit here has now appeared here. If I click Done, I'll enter that new key, but I won't because I only want to have one key. And that is all that's required to configure the instance with the key. So it's not too difficult at all. So now we will SSH into the box using Putty. So we need to identify the external IP. So if we go to the instance, so we select VM instance, we'll go down and we find our external IP. And this will be our host name. So we go to Putty, and we're going to put our host name into Putty. So we enter our external IP into Putty as the host name. And we check that we got SSH. And so now what we need to do is load our key. I got it here where I'm pointed to. Here's this SSH. Choose Auth, and then choose Browse. And then we need to choose the key that we saved for. So here, this Eduonix is the one that I've created for EC2 or Amazon. So the Google one is the one I load. So I open that up, and now I go back up here. I need to go back up to the sessions. This is a key thing. I click on session. Now my key is loaded into Putty. So now if I go open, and just before I do that, I just go down here to metadata, and I'll go to the SSH key step. And see this here, this value here, this is my username. This is what Putty will require as my username when I log in. So now, with sessions selected, the Google public key loaded, I go open. This opens a session. It says log in as. Give it that key identifier as the login. Now it wants the paraphrase, like a password. So you give the paraphrase, and we're in. And I can go ls. So now I've SSH'd into the box. So that was a fairly painless experience. And you might need, if it doesn't work for you, you might need to go back and review each step. You might have made a little mistake somewhere. So now we have a Debian box. So let's just quickly install something on the Debian box so we can see how to work with Google Cloud Compute. Now it's a lot easier than working with Red Hat OpenShift because everything that we have here is for us. This is just a blank Debian slate. There are no environment variables that we need to learn or bind to, just as we struggled with a Red Hat OpenShift. What we will do is we'll install MongoDB. So on Amazon EC2, we installed MySQL. We have a database that's probably just as clean as MySQL, And just as important is MongoDB. Turns out there's a bug in the Google Cloud Compute Engine Debian images, so that's a good thing to know. So unless you're a newbie to Linux, you might want to try and avoid using the Debian image in the first instance. The Debian image would definitely be the easiest Linux image to use on Google Cloud Compute, so that's why I chose it. But it turns out that the build of the Debian image has this major bug. It's not too hard to fix, so we'll go through the steps. The problem is that the default locale isn't set, so what we have to do is set a default. So you copy these commands into Debian, and then you copy this one, and then this is the tricky one when we copy this one in. So I'll just show what this looks like. So I've already set this up. So I've already pasted those two in. So if I paste this one in, I get a pop-up screen. Now I need to identify the locales that I want. Now the easiest thing to do is just to select all locales. That would take a few minutes. I'll just cancel this because I've already done it. So I cancel. And this is the screen, and it takes a while. And so it will load up in the console all the regions in the world. So this just means anyone on the internet, anywhere in the world, can access your box in their language or write code for this box in their language. So now the next thing to do is to actually install Mongo. And you can just copy these instructions in. I have already done that, but I'll just show you what it looks like. So we'll just copy this one in. It just looks like that. So now, you need to use sudo. It doesn't ask for a password because we're logged in as root, but it still needs sudo to work. And now we do updates. So I'll show you what the update command looks like. So now, it's going to update its repositories. So in Debian, it has a repository list, and so now it's contacting all those repositories and seeking to update all the software that it has installed. So if there's any new versions, it will install the latest versions. So after that, we would then just issue this command, sudo apt-get install MongoDB. Now previously, you might find on the internet where they have this command using MongoD, but it's changed now and you need to use MongoDB. And then you can actually start with this command. So I'll issue this command. It will tell you Mongo has already started, so you can see Mongo is already running, and now we can access the Mongo shell. Just type Mongo, and we're into Mongo. We're going to exit. Now we could write some software now, where we could access our database and use our database as an online data store. This winds up our first look at Google Cloud Compute, using the Google Cloud Platform for infrastructure as a service. So we'll move on to the next video now.